Good morning, good day, and good evening. Welcome to episode 178 of Tech of a Tea. I'm, as always, your host, Brody Robertson, and today we have a guest. This is Bigpod. Welcome to the show. How you doing?
Hello, doing great actually.
I've actually known about you for quite a while. I know you do a couple of things on your YouTube channel. That's not how I knew who you were. I didn't even know you had a YouTube channel until you contacted me again to start to do this. I knew you from when you were a mod on DistroTube's Discord.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was a while ago now, wasn't it? Like, when did he shut that down?
Yeah, a couple of years. Must be like a year or two ago.
Mm-mm.
Been
So
quite a while.
why were you doing that in the first place? Like, how did that even happen?
Me and DT go back a couple of years. He had this thing called Open Free Sunday chat, where I used to join and was a bit of a driver of conversation a lot of the time. And basically, I used to be a filler, and then after a while, he made me a moderator there, and after a while, I became moderator basically anywhere he had these things. So I help him out in even now on his channel when he does live streams. I moderate,
Oh, that's
and
cool.
I'm a bit of a filler on his uh, his end of the month Patreon chats he does.
I know you've done some collaboration videos with them as well. There was one where was it
Yeah,
making Arch packages or something like that?
I did two videos with him. One
Mhm.
on Arch packages and one on Snap packages.
Oh yeah, okay, awesome. Well, why you just randomly hit me up as I was on Mastodon? You're like, hey, do you want to? I know this guy who would be great for the podcast. Like his name's Bigpod. Why in the world did you want to come on here? Like what were you going to get out of it?
Well, I'm trying to broaden myself a
Mm-hmm.
bit, my brand, because I'm currently out of a job,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm trying to broaden myself as a YouTuber, as a future blogger, trying to get myself out there if I cannot find a job, so I can have at least something to fall back on,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe in future even be something a little bit bigger,
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
possibly.
it's always I've luckily not had to be in that position where I didn't have any job whatsoever, but I have had some positions where they were not giving me the hours I needed, and it was like, well, I could stick here, but I'm just going to be burning through any savings I have. Within a couple of months, I'm going to have nothing left. Like, I've got to find someplace soon, but what sort of
Yeah.
experience do you have out there? I did see on your LinkedIn you've done some cloud stuff and servery stuff. Like, what is your background in the tech space?
My official job employment record is working in container space,
Mm-hmm.
but my schooling is more primarily in server stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That's what my school had for the level of education I did.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm doing, at the company I was working, also did a lot of programming. So programming in the container space mostly.
Okay. Well, obviously the container space is very Linuxy focused. There is some that
Yeah.
there is some stuff you can do on Windows. It's gotten better than it was, but Linux is still that core focus of containers. So
Yeah.
how did you end up ever getting interested in Linux in the first place? Like, how long have you been using Linux? What was your first distro?
Uh, Third distro was Ubuntu 17.10. Oh,
Okay.
first officially distro,
Mm-hmm.
what I count officially. Um, it's a bit of a story
That's why we're here.
where
I.
I was back in the day. I was actually interested in Linux
Mm-hmm.
before going with Ubuntu 17.10, but I was always thinking it was just a server distro. So every so often I checked it out in a VM, did some stuff, learned a bit, and then deleted it.
Okay.
But with I didn't do a lot of server stuff like for others or for myself for public, so I didn't have much use for server at the time. So I believe it was right before the release of Ubuntu 17.10. One of my professors came with his personal laptop and he booted into something that wasn't Windows. And he asked, "What is this?" And nobody knew except me. I knew just enough, and I said, "That's Ubuntu," but I didn't know which version of Ubuntu because something was different. Ubuntu 7.10, because it had a pre-release version installed. Ubuntu 7.10 is the version that switched from Unity to Gnome, and that threw me off.
Right,
And
that makes
afterwards,
sense.
I talked with him about desktop Linux, and then I found on my desk an old laptop. It was laying on my desk for a couple of years because I was supposed to fix it, but I didn't. It was working just very slowly.
Okay.
And I was supposed to fix it for myself, and I didn't because I never had a need for it. So it was sitting right here where I was supposed to sit and look at it. So that was fun. And I pulled it out and I just for fun installed Ubuntu 17.10 on it. And from then on, I made myself use it because at the end of that school year, I was supposed to write a paper, like 10-page paper on something to do with computers. Because I was supposed to, it was at the end of that segment of schooling, and so I decided I'm gonna do Linux stuff comparing to Windows. Because I had a Windows desktop and a Linux laptop. So I did server stuff because that's more applicable. And so that made me carry that laptop to school, which was really funny because I always had to have a power cord with me because battery didn't work.
Oh, it didn't work. But who cares about battery drain if there's no battery?
Technically, there was a battery to drain, and it technically did drain.
Right.
It just drained in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah, at the time, that was like a 10-year laptop.
Okay.
At the time. And that was like 7 years or something like that ago. And I then got my professors to allow me to use laptop in class, which made me the only one.
Okay.
And especially in the computer classes, I could use my own laptop and all that. And they saw it as a bit of a challenge to see if I can do the same things they do on Windows. And of course, I did everything because by the time I already made myself kind of knowledgeable. And yeah, then that laptop broke right before I was supposed to end the writing of that paper. So I still managed to write the whole of it on Linux. I did it in a VM because that was part of the challenge I set for myself. And then I put it on a USB. I brought it to school printer office and got back a bit of gibberish. Like 10 pages of gibberish. Because LibreOffice and Windows and Office don't go well together.
What was that? So that was... What? So you were doing that 6 years ago?
Yeah.
Yeah, especially back then. It was a lot worse back then.
And then I made it to work in Office at home. Got it back to that printer shop. Got back nice papers. Gave it to professor and got I believe it was a 4. We have a scale from 1 to 5, with 4 being second best grade. I did have a bit of problems, like there were no pictures there because I forgot them. I was supposed to add them, but I forgot. So a professor asked me, why are there no pictures? And before I could think of an answer, he gave an answer for me. And he asked, did you think it will look more professional that way, like white papers you see on internet? And I was like, yes, that's it. And
what a great professor.
Then I was a couple of months without a laptop. I had a desktop, Windows desktop, but then I was supposed to go to a next level of education. So I I got a more powerful laptop, so I could carry it with me all the time because school computers suck. You all know that. And I got myself a powerful gaming laptop, and from day one, it was always meant to be a dual boot machine. But from day one, I booted into the original version of Windows to check it out. It was Windows 10 at the time. I made a USB with Rufus of Ubuntu. At the time, it was already actually 1810 because started next school year, and loaded it up, and that was me using Linux. In the meantime, I also learned Arch Linux in VMs and all that. So soon after, there was a third partition with Arch Linux there, and that's me. Then it was Linux all the time, and there are periods when I used only Linux. There are periods I used dual boot. Nowadays, dual boot is because Call of Duty doesn't work on Linux.
Yep. Okay. So, I probably, now that I think about it, I thought 6 years ago was a long time ago, and then I thought about when I started using Linux, and then I realized, wait, 6 years ago is not that long ago, is it?
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
I would have been daily driving Arch around the same time as well. Then let me actually just check. I probably have a video of it. Rudy Robertson. When did that video come out? No, not the recent videos. Where's the old one? I've got too many videos on this channel. It's got to be close. Maybe like I'm gonna say at least 4 years ago. Someone's gonna know the exactly how long it was. But when I started using Linux, I didn't even have like a Windows VM at the time. I initially started the start of a school term, like maybe 2 weeks in. I just nuked my Windows system and installed Arch. I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know, like, I'd watched a bunch of Luke Smith videos. I kind of knew what I was getting into, but not really. I ended up writing some of my papers at the time I think I wrote some of my papers in Groff, actually. And then exported them out to a PDF. I wrote some others in LaTeX as well. It was a mess of a year, but I think I didn't end up installing a Windows VM until I ran across one random bit of database software that, like, the interface that we were using that was, like, part of the assignment had to be used on Windows, and there was no way to get it running through Wine. It just had to be used on Windows. I think it was, like, a database designer tool or something like that.
That sucks.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, because everything else, like, I got around the LibreOffice rendering issue by just exporting everything to PDFs, except my one professor who was refusing to accept PDFs because he thought it was harder to mark them. I don't know. He was a weird guy. But I don't know. Everyone else, they accepted literally every file format, even formats that didn't make sense. Like, half the assignments I could submit as a TXT document, and they would not care. They might care because the formatting's off, but, like, they accepted it as a submission. But when you were swapping, like, what was your experience like doing that? Because you were intentionally trying to compare the two experiences. Like, what did you feel were your limitations with Linux? What did you feel were the limitations with Windows? Did you feel like one at the time was better than the other? Like, where'd you stand with that?
Windows was definitely better for me because I knew it better.
Sure.
But that aside and hardware issues aside, drivers were a problem.
Okay.
Because while Ubuntu was great, I did try use some other things on that old laptop, like Fedora. In the middle of sitting on the floor waiting for class. Yeah, if you don't have a cable right beside you, ain't gonna work on ancient ass laptop with wireless that definitely don't have drivers in their kernel. Yeah, that was a sucky experience. But otherwise, there weren't many limitations for me at the time outside of gaming. But that was also hardware limitation, so I didn't even think about it.
Do you play Counter-Strike?
Otherwise,
Source.
yeah. we did play Counter-Strike 1.6 in the classroom.
Yep.
Yeah, and we didn't even have internet in that classroom. So because professor said, you can use computers without internet.
Mm-hmm.
So we played Counter-Strike 1.6. But yeah, not much for me at the time. But things I discovered over time where there were certain limitations
Mm-hmm.
of either side.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think early on I didn't realize the limitations. You know, when you first start using a system, you don't know what you don't know about it. So as you start learning
Yeah.
more, you start realizing what you can't actually do. Because obviously I had that database software, but at the time, there also wasn't some like I think some other things I wanted to use, like Zoom. I think at the time with the web client, you couldn't start a call, and I didn't want to install the desktop client, and like some random other. I think some browser plugins might have behaved a little bit weirdly as well. I was using I was using Vivaldi as my browser on Windows and on Linux, and Vivaldi is fine on Windows. At the time, the Linux version, for some reason, just took forever to load. It wasn't a snap, it wasn't a Flatpak, nothing like that. It just took forever to load. I don't know why. I think for me, the biggest hurdle is the fact that I threw myself directly into a tiling window manager. My first experience on Linux was using i3, which also is not a great tiling window manager experience. It's great because it's easy to configure. The default config is, you know, really well set up, but it's a manual tiler, and manual tilers are rough because, you know, you end up forgetting, like, if you're just getting started, you don't realize that you can, like, rearrange things in all this nice way, and you just have this line of pillars across your screen, and every application is just horrible to use. So I actually got into the habit of basically not even using the tiler. I would have one window on each virtual desktop, and I still do that today. I just feel like it's more convenient. Like, with the exception of maybe I'll do a 2-split, but I'm usually not going to go above that except in really weird edge cases. But
Yeah.
what are you using? Oh, okay. Once you started using Ubuntu, where did you go from there? You started using Arch at some point. Did you stick on Arch like going forward, or were there other things you played
I
around
was
with?
hopping around quite a bit,
Mm-hmm.
trying to learn things. I always had Ubuntu to fall upon,
Sure.
but Arch and Ubuntu were my mainstays.
Mm-hmm.
But I was always keeping with something floating. I didn't really venture into tiling window managers. So the most extreme thing that I was using was OpenBox.
Mm-hmm.
But otherwise, mostly using Gnome Mate, which can be seen from my history even today.
Mm-hmm. So, have you've tried out tilers along the way though, haven't you? Or have
I
you not?
have tried couple and didn't
It's not your
care a
thing.
lot for them.
Okay.
Not my thing.
What don't you like about tilers? Like, is it just the familiarity you have with the floating experience because of Windows, or is there something about the workflow that doesn't really suit what you're trying to do?
Honestly, I would sooner or later use floating mode and put windows in such an order that I had tiny parts of this window, and on top of it another window, maybe even half of that window, because other half is on the non-existent monitor and stuff like that. So
Mhm.
that's how I got used to in Windows,
Mhm.
and that's my workflow to basically accomplish same thing but waste less space.
That's fair. The like my only problem with the float is I use floating windows. I will put windows in floating mode on my tiler, but I use it as like a fairly sparing thing. Like I've got a web browser in my OBS layout right now, and the browser itself is like sitting on my window, like sitting on my main window above my face on like the Discord layout, because I want to see my face as I'm talking. But most Windows I will tile. Like as I said, because I do everything where it's like usually one window per desktop. Do you actually make use of virtual desktops a lot, or do you like to just cram everything on one place?
I don't tend to use virtual desktop.
Okay.
I have two monitors. One monitor is my working monitor where I have mostly one window open, whether it be a IDE, game, a browser, whatever it is I'm working on. Then I have a secondary monitor that's over there that I have basically Windows laid out willy-nilly, and some of them are minimized. I don't need virtual desktop because of that. Because I'm used to that, and I did use virtual desktops on Windows for some time, but the main reason I used them was because I literally wanted to hide something.
Right.
It wasn't even showing up when I was alt tabbing. That was my use case for virtual desktops.
Yeah, I didn't use them when I was on Windows, like, really either, because there is a hotkey for it. I don't know what the hotkey was. So, from my experience, like, because I probably could have just Googled it and found it, but whenever I did virtual desktop stuff, it was sort of accidentally. Like, I'd hit the key to like do the virtual desktop switcher and then move a window over, and I was like, wait, why did I do that? I don't know. That's stupid. Like, if I was gonna have it, you know, Super 1, Super 2, Super 3, like you'd normally have on a tiler, like, then I probably would get used to it more, and someone's probably going to tell me the hotkeys for it, and it's going to be something really obvious. And I'm sure if I go back to it, I'd probably want to work out how to do it. But
I think it's super left and super right.
oh, so there's no way to jump directly to it? It's just left and right?
I'm not sure. I think it's super left, super right, but
Okay.
I never used hotkeys for virtual
that's
desktop.
fair. No,
There is another use case I use virtual desktop for in Windows. At the time when I was still in school, when I was using school computers, when I wanted to hide something from professors.
Yep.
That was a useful thing. We were supposed to be doing something. No, we were playing games and I was the one that never got caught. Mainly because of that.
I guess
Not because they didn't really care, because I always had everything done before I started playing games.
Now that I think about it, I guess back in high school when we were using Macs, I would have been using virtual desktops back then as well. Yeah, because I was using like Mountain Lion or something.
My condolences.
Sorry?
My condolences.
Condolences. I've not used a Mac in such a long time. I don't know if anybody remembers this, but I actually started my YouTube channel on a Mac. Yeah, it was not a good idea. Don't do that. Because back when I started the channel, it wasn't a Linux channel. It was just, I don't know what it was. I can't explain what it was, because it wasn't a tech channel either. Some of my early videos, I've just talked about things that don't matter. Like, I made a video about when I hit like a curb and then shattered the hubcap on my car. I was like, hey, look, I broke that. And that was just the entire video. It was a bad video. No one should watch it. I think it's still uploaded if you want to go watch it, but you shouldn't watch it. But
yeah.
Eventually I did start using Arch. I got a laptop that I could install Arch on. It wasn't a perfect experience. Surprisingly, I didn't have any Wi-Fi issues at the time, which I was really expecting to have. But then eventually the touchpad broke, and now I don't have a touchpad on it, and I didn't ever want to get fixed. Plus, I don't really use the laptop anymore anyway, so it's not really a big deal for me in the first place. But I always worked with, as I said, I always worked with having one thing installed on hardware. But you were saying that you had different petitions for your different distros, yeah?
Yeah.
Have you run into a situation where maybe you selected the wrong petition, maybe you wiped the entire drive? Have you ever accidentally installed over something you shouldn't have had? I shouldn't have done so.
I I made my data in such a way that even if I did, I didn't care.
So you weren't gonna lose your
thankfully,
home.
never did. Yeah, I did lose my home many times. Catch was I didn't have any data in my home.
Right. Wait, what do you
I
mean?
had one partition. I had I don't know how big SSD and a bigger hard drive.
Mm-hmm.
And that hard drive was a shared partition or shared drive between Windows and Linux always. So it was NTFS formatted. I had all the data on it.
Wait, I'm sorry. Hold up a second. Wait.
So I had access to the all data, whether it was on Windows or Linux or any Linux. That was
What?
my horrible system of doing things.
Wait,
Yes.
your main data drive was an NTFS drive on Linux.
Yes. Yes. You can
How was
do
the
that.
NTFS driver back then? Because I know it's not perfect nowadays. Like,
Working. That's simply that. It was working. Never broke for me.
mm-hmm.
It was. I have to say, it was great. It worked. And
I don't believe that it was great. I believe that it's working.
it was working. It had all normal speeds you would expect for a SATA 3 2.5-inch drive, and that was all I was expecting.
Jesus.
Worked.
So stupid.
Let's just say my goal was having all data accessible on any OS I put it into.
I guess
And
you
it
technically
accomplished that.
achieved that. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Let's just say after I switched off that laptop, I never did that architecture again.
Yeah, I hope not. That seems like a recipe for disaster. I'm surprised. Did anything ever bad ever happen to that drive, or did it survive the entire
No,
time? No, it's just
it's
fine.
still in that. It's the main drive in that laptop currently.
Wow, that's actually kind of impressive.
Or no, actually it isn't. I removed it.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually now my main backup drive in my desktop.
Please tell me it's not still NTFS.
Yes, it is. But it isn't. But it isn't actually loaded into Linux unless I manually do it, because the point of that thing right now is that if whether it be Windows or Linux, I need to make a backup. I just zip, tar, whatever, everything, mount the drive. Of course, I first have to plug it in because it's always unplugged.
Yep.
It's me. I like to make things harder for myself. I plug it in, mount it, put the zip or tar file on it, unmount, shut down the computer, unplug it, and that's it's 15-minute operation per every few months. Unless I have to clean it up because I filled the 2 terabyte space, so then I first clean it up, so it's a half an hour operation.
Is that a SSD or a mechanical drive?
It's a hard drive.
Okay.
1.5-inch.
When you said it's not mounted, I thought you were gonna say it's not mounted on Windows, and then I was gonna.
It's not mounted anywhere unless I'm copying into it. I unmount it.
Okay.
And then unplug it because it's backup drive now.
Sure. I'm like, is that your only backup drive? Because that seems like a bit of an old drive.
It's 6-year-old drive. Yeah.
Yes.
I have one that is actually older. It is. Wait, how old is that drive? 11 years.
Please tell me that's not part of your
10.
backup solution
10.
as well.
It is. But that drive is for backups of things I have somewhere else as well.
Right.
It's a secondary backup.
Okay. Redundancy is fine. Okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
So is that your
I have it mainly.
So what is your backup system right now? Like how if you want to back up your system, you want to back up something, what is the process that you end up taking?
Everything that isn't absolutely cannot hit internet or in any way I don't want it to hit internet
Mm-hmm.
goes on I goes on both drives,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
or at least the one that is in my computer. Everything that can hit internet is zipped up or tarred up and put onto a private cloud storage.
Okay. Is that
It's
Nextcloud or is that
like
something else?
blob storage, no application specifically. It's
Okay.
cloud.
Okay.
Think
Okay.
AWS S3 or whatever GCP. I'm not telling which one it is.
Sure. 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 No,
It
fair
is
enough.
one, but it is one of the big three.
Sure. You just dump it on there and then it just exists.
Yeah,
Okay.
exists on there. It's private,
Mhm.
encrypted. I don't care.
Mm-hmm. And then if you need to like just grab something from that, you just pull it down and then hopefully
Yeah.
you don't need to use it, but you know it's just going to be there.
Yeah, it's mostly things I already have somewhere else, because everything that is able to hit internet is probably my source code, and that is probably on my personal GitLab server.
Right.
So
Do you host your GitLab
there's some other
yourself?
stuff. Yeah,
Okay, because I noticed you hosted your Mastodon as well. Are those
I
the
host that as well. Yeah,
are those the only things that you host, or are there other things out there that are on your
there are
domain?
other things as well.
Okay.
I also host my own OCI registry, so for Docker images, or what I use now, Podman images.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I have, and that's quite a necessary thing for me
Mm-hmm.
to have.
So
I have that
is
currently. Those three.
so is that something you're hosting on your own hardware, or are you hosting on
No,
some? No. Okay.
it's public. It's publicly accessible. It doesn't touch my network at all.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
In such a way that I would host it. That's a big no-no in my opinion.
Why do you feel that? Why do you not think it should be on your own network?
Because that means I would have to open ports to my network, and
Fair
that's
enough.
not gonna happen.
I know some people like the idea of I of like physically hosting your own. Oh, it's one thing to host your own local stuff. Like you want to host your own
Yeah,
local backup, for
I host
example.
that.
Yeah.
I have that. I have a server for that. But whatever is publicly accessible, that should be somewhere separate.
Okay.
If I had a separate connection for that, yes, I have a singular connection. No chance.
You don't trust
If
that.
I was
Mhm.
if I was alone, living alone, sure. I don't
Right.
live alone. Simple as that.
So you don't want to put other people's data at risk by doing
Yeah,
that. Okay,
something
that's
like
fair.
that.
That's totally fair.
Other people, data, experience, all that.
Mhm.
But then I would have to fix it.
So
Let's be
with the
honest.
stuff that you do host remotely, what made you want to go and host your own GitLab rather than use the main instance or your own Mastodon instead of using any of the instances out there? Like, why do that yourself? Why go through the hassle?
For GitLab, it is that I do a bunch of weird stuff.
Right.
Bunch of weird, crazy stuff with my code, with all the stuff, and I don't want to bog them down or anything like that. I know what I'm doing is insane, so I
I
host
need
it
an
myself.
example here of what you're doing that's
Let's just say
so bad.
I used to make anything that was R that wasn't in main repos. I used to build myself with automation. So
Mm-hmm.
AUR, if it was AUR, it was in a GitLab repo on my server, and every day it was building.
Right. Okay.
So stuff like that. And that's compute and storage. I shouldn't waste on them.
Mm-hmm. You know
Simple
what you
as
should
that. And
do?
we should.
You should do what Ublue does and put it on GitHub.
I know we do that, but we do it for a reason.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
We share it with public.
Right.
I didn't share it with public. I was the only user of it,
No, that's
and I
fair.
didn't want anyone else using it. To be
Mhm,
honest, so that's the reality.
Right.
That's the reason why, and that's the same reason I don't have configs on my GitHub, GitLab, because I think it's just waste of their space.
Mm-hmm.
Because at the end of the day, only I will use it.
Right. Okay. No, I get that. That makes sense. So what about the Mastodon then? Is that you don't trust that some instance that you're on is going to go down, or?
I don't trust for them to go down. Yeah, that would be more of a mainstream explanation. The
Sure.
realistic explanation is that I switched to many servers.
Mm-hmm.
I was on one server. I don't even remember which one it was. I switched from that one. I believe I was deleted from it, or I deleted it myself. I don't know. Maybe I forgot to even log in for a long time, so it got deleted that way.
Mm-hmm.
Then I was on another server, Distro,
Mm-hmm.
and that one shut down.
Yep.
Then I was on another server, and again forgot to use Mastodon, so I got deleted from there, or it closed down. I don't know. And then the latest craze about Mastodon came. I decided I'm not gonna be looking into a new server when I forgot to log in for a year, because I will forget to log in.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna create my own server. Let's see what happens.
Mm.
And yeah, it's working.
Well, if it's a single user instance, it
that's
shouldn't be that bad.
Architecture is in such a way that I'm sure multiple of single users could work on it. I did an overkill solution.
Okay. What I don't even know what the process of hosting Mastodon is, so I don't even know what an overkill solution would be in this case.
I use 3 servers for what could be one. Let's just say, I have a database server. I have a main program server, so where Mastodon runs, and I have a server for what I call front end, aka all it does is a proxy layer.
Why?
But it does allow me to do some stuff with other stuff. So on the same server, I have GitLab, I have my registry, all that.
Okay.
So those 3 servers now contain all my public infrastructure.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Of course, I also did something special, and about a month ago, I went and for about a couple of hours turned off my proxy layer, so nothing was accessible. And when it came back, it was working just fine as before.
Oh, that's
good. You know what was the difference? I switched to the server.
At least the proxy layer came back. That's good.
Yeah, it came back. It should have. It's Nginx after all. Only difference was it was compiled for a different architecture. Because I went and I bought a new virtual machine. This time with ARM. So now I have my proxy layer is ARM. I can say I use ARM now.
Why did you change the arc? Why did you do that? I need to know why you swapped to ARM.
Say I use ARM.
Right.
That's the reason I tell people. Reality is I save $1 or euro. I save €1 a month.
Okay, that's pretty good. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So stupid. This model is so overkill for what you're doing.
Dual core. It's my I play with that stuff. That's the point of it. If it goes down, it goes down. I don't care. It's I use it unless I said something to public so someone else can pull it from my thing, and that's it. Like I use it outside of Mastodon. I'm the only person who accesses it normally. So if it goes down, it's my fault. That was kind of the point of it all.
Right. So outside of doing this weird architecture, how difficult would you say for someone who's never hosted Mastodon to go and do it themselves? Because I know a lot of people will set up a Mastodon instance with one of the Mastodon hosting providers, like the ones who just do all of that stuff automatically for you. But if someone just wanted to go and do it, and Yeah, how difficult would that be?
It's somewhat simple.
Okay,
Of course, because of my experience, I use the Docker container
right.
or Docker compose file, which had multiple of same container.
Hmm.
And that is pretty simple. All I had to do was fill out their configuration file
Hmm.
properly, and set up a Postgres server and a Redis server. But it's all that file was all set up for me already. So all I had to do was enter the right links into it.
Hmm.
The only problem comes when you want to do it publicly. SSL, that is, let's encrypt. Let's be honest, free. Why
Sure.
not? And Nginx. If you're not versed in Nginx, you have a bit of trouble. You might have a bit of trouble configuring. But then again, there's configurations even for that are available publicly on GitHub and even on their website, so you can use that
Hmm. Hmm.
as a basis. So it's pretty streamlined.
So it's, I guess, yeah, I guess with containers nowadays, like that makes things a lot easier than it would have been at one point. Like,
Yeah,
I know that clearly you have some sort of interest in the cloud space and the server space and all that. Did
yeah,
you, like, were you, like, how big were containers back when you first started doing stuff?
non-existent, at least
Non-existent?
to me.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Containers were a thing, but they were clearly, especially in my bubble, were basically non-existent.
mm-hmm.
I came across them a couple of years ago, 2-3 years ago. No, it actually had to be more. Time flies nowadays.
Sure.
You
So
don't even notice.
I think
Like
back on
three,
my
4 years
experience.
ago.
If I think back on my experience, I think maybe it's just, yeah, maybe it is just your bubble then, because I do remember a class I had where we covered Docker containers, but then I had other
We didn't have that at
classes.
school.
Sorry.
I was the one who introduced Docker containers to my professors.
Okay, but I also had another class where we did Angular, not Angular JS, but the original Angular that was
Yeah,
very deprecated at that point. So,
great.
there is this mix of things that make sense and then ancient tech. But
Yeah.
so you clearly have an interest in the server side. Like, why is it the server side that seems to like grab your attention so much?
Um, maybe part of it is because I think it's the future.
Okay.
I think client side is gonna change in the next few years. Of course, I've been thinking that for the last 7-8 years, but yeah, I think sooner or later client side will change.
Mm-hmm,
It will
mm-hmm.
go smaller, thin machines. It will still be powerful enough to run on its own, but for the most part, we will use cloud, whether it's through browsers, whether it's through sort of virtual network infrastructure, through something infrastructure. You know
Mm-hmm.
what I mean?
Yep.
Um, something like that. It will go through that, and I think knowing server side is very important. And also I've been writing most of the stuff for myself in web app form. I haven't written a desktop app, even for things that I give interface for in a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Longer than I've been using Linux, actually.
Okay. So did you have? Well, it sounds like you have experience with that before, like back on Windows. Then, so
Yeah,
when did you start getting involved in this space, like full stop? Then.
that goes probably to most of the time I wrote software.
Mm-hmm.
First software I wrote when I was like 14. That
Okay.
was when I learned C++, I think, in school, in what would be considered
That,
high school level education.
that is a rough class. C++ in a high school.
Yes, let's just
Was it a
say we have a vocational high school
Oh,
education.
was it a
So
teacher that understood C++, or were they learning
No,
along the?
that was what it was picked for our year, and the person just happened to know it and teach it.
Okay.
Let's just say I learned everything myself. So, and I was still in front of the class, even though I learned everything myself. I was three classes in front. Of course, I started a class early because by the time we started, it was half a year in because we were first learning theoretics of programming, or not really theoretical. It was practical using Scratch. MIT program Scratch, something like that. Yeah, that little cat, I believe it is the icon.
Yeah, that's now that I think about it, that's actually a really interesting way to run a programming class, teach the concepts, and then move you into like an actual language.
Yeah.
Like, huh? Okay, no,
Let's just say,
not as bad as I thought.
let's just say, without saying anything about my classmates, I was the only one who happened to have next couple hours free when after we had a test. So first time, professor sent me out. Second time, he said, "Wait here, sit on that back computer, turn on some text, some IDE for C++," and then he just dropped a C++ book, and I think it was a Slovenian translation of the actual C++ from the original authors or something like that. He just dropped it and said, "Start on page 1." That was my introduction to C++.
Wait, so he just didn't even want to teach you?
I was too ahead of the curve on that. I think I had a classmate who managed to pass the gauntlet after me, so he joined me then.
God.
Yeah. So then there was a couple of classes in front. So by the time we came to the third year out of 5, I taught myself Java and C Sharp.
Okay.
I didn't want to touch C++ ever again. And by that point, I didn't want to touch Java ever again.
Yep, I know the feeling.
C Sharp for me.
Yeah, C Sharp is just Microsoft skin Java. I actually like it. I know some people are like, my C Sharp bad. Like it takes Java and then just makes it less Java, which is great.
It makes it a million times better, let's be honest.
Yeah.
So from that point, I first learned how to do desktop applications on it, first console applications, of course, desktop applications, and then I started looking into ASP.NET. And after that, I threw away all the knowledge I had about desktop applications because that's it. APIs, front ends, and then came 2 years happened, and then came the fateful 17.10 release and me installing Ubuntu. What do you think happened? First thing I installed was .NET Core, and that's what I've been using ever since.
Wait, so everything you do now is .NET Core?
No, it's not.
No,
everything now is .NET because they changed the name.
Oh, right.
Now it's .NET. That is .NET. Not anymore .NET Core.
I forgot about
but yeah, when I write code for myself, I write C Sharp.
Okay. Huh.
Fun fact for people who watch. .NET works faster on Linux than on Windows. And Microsoft knows that and hasn't yet done anything about it. They also implemented a couple of features specifically for Linux that were not available on Windows or Mac until the next version. So I really don't care.
So what you're saying is that Linux is the definitive .NET platform?
Nowadays, yes. Especially for ASP.NET. ASP.NET Core. What are you going to use? You should use Docker containers anyway. That's why it works that great, because Docker containers.
That's a good point. Yeah, no, I didn't think of that. I guess, like, I know it's really easy to hate Microsoft for everything they do, and for many things, they absolutely deserve it. But Microsoft today is not the Microsoft of the early 2000s. They don't want... They're not going to be like, we are proudly a Linux company, because that goes against their core, we're trying to sell Windows, trying to sell Windows Server, all that. But they are
Yeah.
fully aware, when they say Microsoft loves Linux, they are not lying. But there's also a little
Yeah.
asterisk there, and then under it in very small text, we love money. And Linux is money.
Basically, it's money for them. It's what drives most of their cloud, or not. Let me correct myself. It doesn't drive their cloud. It is the thing in the car,
Mhm.
and the car is made out of Windows. Still,
I thought it was a
their
really
servers are
bad
still
metaphor.
Windows. Their servers are still Windows.
Right.
Just most of the things that are running on those servers inside VMs are Linux.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, if you're doing everything in Docker containers, you're doing everything in virtual machines, you do everything.
If you're doing Kubernetes, you're doing Docker, if you're doing anything like that, you're gonna be running Linux because nothing else really works with that.
Oh, you can use Docker on
Technically, you
Windows?
have Windows nodes for Kubernetes, but who uses that? Come on.
I'm sure there's going to be at
Let's
least
be
one
honest.
person out there that's like, I do.
Let's just say, I think I know someone who does, but they use both.
Well, where are we gonna go? Where do we go from this? So we talked about server stuff. I guess the best place to go from here is talk about your... So you've got this interest in like servers and containers, and that sort of leads naturally into these image-based systems that I see that you've sort of got yourself into nowadays. When did you start getting interested in containers on the desktop side?
As with everything with me, that even predates my interest in containers on desktop for the image-based OSs.
Okay.
I for the first time I heard of Silverblue. I thought it was a great idea, but it was the future. It works right alongside with the whole idea of client becomes less important, all that. But what was, in my opinion, it was a horrible user experience because making your own extension of it so you could deploy it was a horrible experience. So I didn't use it. And then George Castro kindly showed me through I was following his project before it was even a project actually, but it was just a bunch of shell scripts. And at one point I checked it out and it was archived, and then I found out it was moved to a project because now it has gotten better OCI images, and I installed it on my at the time work laptop. And soon
as your
after,
main OS? I hope not.
Yes.
Oh, God.
It was the point I was running Ubuntu before that. So
Okay. That's not as
I knew
bad
what I was
then.
getting into. We were using either Ubuntu or whatever Linux we wanted. There were a couple of Windowses and Macs, but mostly it was Linux.
Okay.
So I had Fedora Silverblue on it. Everything ran perfectly. And at first I didn't really engage, but right before, like a couple of months before I actually lost my job, a month or two, I started engaging with them, and rest is history.
So, how long ago was that, do you reckon? Because if Diablo already existed, then it can't have been that long
My
ago.
guess, February, March.
What, this year?
This year.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought it was maybe a bit longer than that. So things like DistroBox already definitely existed. And actually,
DistroBox.
did that exist yet, or was that a couple months later?
DistroBox exists for a while now.
it certainly didn't get the attention until a lot more recently.
Yeah.
But Toolbox definitely existed.
Toolbox existed for a couple of years, ever since Silverblue.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah, Distrobox has been around at least since last year.
Yeah.
Huh. So from there, you just sort of... Is that what you're using now? You're using Ublu?
Yeah.
So,
I use my own build built on top of George's build on top of Ublu, built on top of Silverblue.
mhm. So what was it about Ublu that grabbed your attention? Was it George's explanation on how to build your own custom image, or was it something else that Ublu actually offered?
Some of it was George, how he was handling things, and some of it was that things were already done. NVIDIA was already working. That was a big driver for me.
Mm-hmm.
NVIDIA was already working, other stuff already working, so why not? And then I started doing things like talking with them, and then I started filling in pull requests or accepting pull requests and checking them out. Then I did a couple of pull requests more together with them, like we did a couple of actions. That's another one of my things I like to do is CI/CD stuff, and that then came to me being where I am now with them.
So it's just how would you wait? I don't know where I was going with that. Now that I think about it. This happens sometimes. So what are you running on Ublu? Like, what is your desktop right now?
Gnome.
Gnome? Okay.
Gnome. Yeah.
Have you I know you said you messed around with Mate. Have you experimented with things like KDE, XFC, or anything like that else, like in your past?
I probably ran most of the major desktop environments
And
one time or another.
And you just tend to gravitate back towards Gnome then?
Yeah. There was a period of time of probably a year when I ran Mate.
Okay. So it wasn't that long.
But, could have been a bit more. I ran it on Ubuntu.
Mm-hmm.
It was Ubuntu Mate. And I was a member of that team as well.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
So, what is it about Gnome or Gnome, or however you want to say? I don't really care how people get really weird about the name. I don't
know
care
why
how you pronounce it. Like it's just like people getting weird about Linus and Linus. Like he says it's fine either way. It doesn't matter. I know one's technically correct.
I am more about that because it's his name.
Sure. If he said it's Linus and that's the only one that's correct, like that would be fine. But when he says Americans are stupid, basically, just say Linus. Like if you're gonna say both, it's fine.
I don't correct people, but if people ask me, or like if somebody was like, "Is that correct?" I would tell them how it is correct. Linus. Mm-hmm. As far as I know, that's the Finnish.
Yeah.
Finnish specific version of saying Linus.
And then his surname is pronounced slightly differently in Finnish and Swedish as well. I don't know the differences.
Yeah.
Anyway, that's not where I was getting to with this. What is it about Gnome that grabs your attention? Like, why is that the distro you gravitate towards? I know a lot of people, there's a lot of people in Linux space who are like, Gnome bad, Gnome this, Gnome that. But like, what is it about that? Because it's not, like, it's floating, yes. But it's not a Windows-like experience. It is a very different kind of desktop.
It's very simplistic desktop.
Okay.
A lot of people don't understand that it's really simplistic. You have the top bar, you have dock in whatever format you want because extensions, and you have that grid where you select your application. Mm-hmm. That's it. That's the simplistic part of it, and I like that big screen instead of a menu. That to me never made sense. During Windows 8 times, I hated on it in a big way. Mm-hmm. As soon as Windows 10 came out, I realized how wrong I was. Let's be honest. And as soon as I could, since there was an option later in Windows 10, you could set it so it was always a screen instead of a small menu. And that's one of the driving factors for me for GNOME, because that is like, big, icons are big, you can see things, and search works for applications, and that's it. Like my operating system, I wanted to get out of my way, and nothing does that better than GNOME, in my opinion.
I think the issue with the Windows 8 grid is, so GNOME is fine because it's all consistent. Like every icon's the same size, there's the same spacing. It's very clear where things are going to be. Windows 8, you had these different sized boxes, they had different colors. It was just a mishmash of everything. I get what they were trying to do, but I don't think it worked. I think, like, it's obviously like they're trying to adapt a tablet system into a desktop system, but they didn't go far enough into it being a desktop system. So it seemed really jarring for those people who wanted nothing to do with tablets and like mobile devices for their computer. But GNOME is that it's more of that middle ground where it's a very friendly tablet system, very friendly mobile system, but it's still like, you know, clear grids, clear spacing, and it feels a lot more coherent to me.
At the end of the day, for me, it's all about search.
Right.
And screen makes search much cleaner. Where it was on Windows or it is on GNOME. Screen makes search much cleaner. It can show more stuff on it and so on. Whereas with menu, it on Windows 10 and 11, first of all, it changes size. Then it on Windows especially, it sometimes does this, sometimes that. And with menu, that's generally a thing because we'll have to change because of it is actually doing stuff. Screen doesn't need to. That's been my main driver for it, for all of this. And yeah, GNOME is clean. GNOME gets out of the way. It uses more resources, but I don't care about that. Honestly, I don't care about the so-called bloat.
Yeah, the whole resource usage thing, it's a really weird one to me. I guess it's because there is a lot of people in the Linux world who like to run, or who maybe only have some really old system. It's got 1 gigabyte of RAM, it's running a 10-year-old CPU. And for those people, yeah, I get it. You're trying to preserve...
Yeah, for those people, I understand. Problem is that a lot of people who call this stuff out don't run that.
Yeah, no, they've got like 16 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of RAM.
64. Try 64, you're gonna be probably more correct for those nerds.
Yeah, some of them for sure.
And when I say those nerds, I also mean myself, because I also run 64 gigs for some reason.
Yeah, I've got 32 in this system. That's enough for me. I can't even manage to use up that.
Impulse buy.
I guess if you're using a lot of like virtual machines and things like that.
That was my plan, yeah.
But
I use 20 gigs right now.
That's fine. Let's see what I'm using.
Also, that is probably a virtual machine.
I'm using 3.7 gigs of 32. And probably the max I go to is maybe about 8 or 9. My system is very overkill.
Yeah. My system is as well.
But hey, you know, overkill's fun.
Overkill is underrated. That's my thing I say when someone says I have an overkill system.
But the thing with bloat is I don't get why people like I get if you have a reason for the performance, like you're trying to get every last bit out of a game, for example. Like that makes sense. Get rid of everything else running, make a very clean and lightweight gaming system. But for the people who just, you know, they live in a web browser, they live in their email client, they live in their IRC chat. Like,
But it's using too much of my 64 gigs of RAM.
Yeah. They're running DWM as their window manager, and like the extra megabyte here and there, like that's the problem. Now, there are some applications that are really bad. Like there are some web browsers that actually most web browsers that just devour RAM. Like that's probably the thing that I have that uses the most RAM. Like when I have Brave open and I'm running like 10, 20 tabs, it's just like, hey, how much RAM can I have? Can I just have all of it? Sure, go ahead. Why not?
Yeah, that's a big issue for it is browsers, but browsers use it for a reason.
I'm sure there is a reason.
JavaScript sandboxing that uses a lot of RAM.
Yeah.
But I've seen people who, for no other reason than to just go bloat free, they go with Gentoo. Not for any good reason like Joshua does. Joshua has a great reason for it. They go because they want the system to use as little RAM as possible, even though they have 64 gigs of RAM or even more.
My favorite meme with Gentoo is if I compile the code of my own system, it's going to make it drastically faster. Like you're maybe going to get a little bit of extra optimization out there, and if you mess with some build flags, for sure, you'll definitely get some faster applications. But when people are just downloading the package and then compiling it as is, you're not saving any real time.
I think I talked with someone who does like high performance computing or something like that. So things that actually compiling yourself would matter.
Sure.
I believe they said that beyond compiling the actual runtime library they use, nothing else makes sense because only that does actually at the end of the day lower their time in a significant way for them. Anything else makes no sense because when you're doing things on so many computers and so long, you wanna eke out each second of performance, but then you realize that everything that you want to have it available all the time as well, not have it compile every few days for I don't know how long, just so that it's 20 minutes earlier, down 20 minutes earlier.
You have to sort of think about the benefit versus the weight of doing it. Where, like, if you're going to save 1 second per run, but the update's going to be 20 minutes, you got to save 20 minutes worth of seconds for it to even be worth it.
Yeah. You won't do that. But then again, we're engineers.
Sure.
We automate for 2 weeks for what is a 1 second job.
Like, if you're just doing it for the sake of it being fun, like that's fine. But now in the engineer case, that's because you're trying to justify having a job. That's a little bit different.
That's because you're trying. No, that's because you're trying to. All the future times you're gonna be doing it, you're gonna let something else do it. You're gonna do something else because you probably have such a stack of things to do, and you're not paid by hour.
Yeah, that's fair.
Let's be honest.
Yeah, no, that's fair. You know, spend the time now and not deal with it later. Spend more time now so you never have to think about it again.
Or when you do have to think about it, it's, I have to press that button.
One thing you mentioned earlier. One thing I want to go back to from earlier is the whole thin client thing you mentioned, where you say, like, this seems to be the direction we're going in the future, but I think we're sort of most of the way there now. Like, people like us, we still have, you know, high-performance systems because, you know, we're interested in gaming, things like that. But for a lot of regular people, they don't have a computer. Like, they will have a phone, they'll have a tablet, and a lot of schools, especially in my area, they are giving their students Chromebooks. Like, these are very, very low-power systems. Like, obviously, some of the higher-end Chromebooks can get fairly powerful, but like these are like $300, $400 Chromebooks where they barely have any storage, and you actually have to do everything through Google Docs, through some other cloud services. Like, you are not doing anything local in these systems. So I think we are already most of the way there, and I actually don't think it's a bad thing per se, because
I don't think it's either.
Sorry?
I don't think it is either.
I think a lot of the applications that we otherwise wouldn't ever see on Linux, over the next couple of years, we are likely going to see. I will be very surprised if, like, Adobe doesn't go full-on cloud. Like, they don't have like, Adobe 365, whatever you want to call it, where it's, like, you can just run it on any system you want and just run it in a browser. I'm surprised they don't already have that.
I'm surprised as well, actually.
Like, it seems like the most logical direction
why.
for me.
I know why they don't have it.
Mm-hmm.
Because that would get expensive real fast for them.
Sure.
Because they're popular and they have a lot of stuff to render. That would get expensive.
Actually, that's a good point, yeah.
That's the only reason, reality, if you ask me. And getting it done, and that's it. But render costs would get high fast for them. That's it.
I guess if you wanted to do it, probably the lightest place to start of their stack would be Photoshop, because whilst it's still going to be expensive to render, it's not Premiere expensive to render.
Yeah. But then Premiere could get expensive real fast.
That's what I mean. Like, if they're going to do it, the Photoshop seems like the best place to start, and then just scale out from there.
Yeah.
But I know a lot... On that note, like, that takes us sort of back into the other thing with the bloat topic, where there's a lot of applications now we see using Electron, which is just a glorified Chromium browser. But that's given us the ability to have, you know, we wouldn't have Discord on Linux without Electron. There's a lot of programs we just wouldn't have if Electron didn't exist. And I get it. I get people wanting to have a lighter application, especially in those cases where it's a poorly programmed Electron application, and it's one that is quite laggy. But in a lot of cases, in those cases where the program is designed well, I don't really care. Like, I really don't. And if it uses a bit of extra RAM, like, fine. Go ahead, use the extra RAM. It's not like I was really using it anyway.
I'm gonna say this way. People who know me either from Distro chats or just know me from my stuff, or who will know me now, will know that I hate JavaScript. I'm its biggest opponent. My favorite IDE is fully implemented in JavaScript.
Is it
probably TypeScript, because it's Visual Studio Code.
Yep. Okay.
Electron app. There you go. I don't care. If it's a good app, if it works, great. If it doesn't, oh well, I won't care for it.
Yeah.
But that, and whether it's proprietary or open source, whether it's Electron, whether it's GTK, whether it's Qt, all of that, I care about it working for me.
I think with the, like, especially with the growth of things like the Steam Deck, we're seeing a lot more people like that coming over to Linux space, and it is leading to a bit of this I don't know, over the past maybe, I guess since I started using Linux, I've noticed this weird culture shift happening in Linux. Because back when I first started, maybe this is just the people that I was surrounding myself with. When I first started, the whole everything must be free software, always free software, nothing but free software, that was the message I was getting back when I first started. But I've seen people now who don't care if it's proprietary, they don't make a distinction between free software and open source. They've accepted that MIT is like the license of the free software world now, because that's what it is. Like, people don't, for the most part, make new GPL projects. There are some exceptions, but most of the projects we're seeing are MIT projects, BSD projects. We're not seeing as many GPL style projects anymore. And this is leading to, like, this weird clash between the people who are classically using Linux and this newer crowd that is, I guess, less interested in that and more interested in the the technical aspect, like what they can get out of the system, rather than the ethical concerns attached to the kind of software you use.
Yeah. Well, I was on the same, like, I was bombarded with the same free software messaging you were.
Mm-hmm.
I have same opinion that I had before. The ethics have nothing to do here.
Mm-hmm.
Simple as that. It's all about what works for you and what you want to use. Simple as that. And if they don't want to use proprietary software, they have all right to not use it. That's the freedom of software.
Mm-hmm. So you're very much
Problem
on the pragmatic aspect of it then.
Yeah.
The software that
Yeah.
does the job is the software that is the good software.
Yeah. I also am the person who will use MIT, but that's because I think it's actually much freer license than GPL. In my opinion, freedom of the developers is just as important as freedom of users.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this
Something
is... sorry, go on.
GPL doesn't... freedom of developers is something GPL doesn't take into account.
Yeah, this is I think where the big culture clash exists, because when people say free software, like, that has a very particular meaning. It means the FSF definition of freedom. But when someone thinks of the term freedom, like, that doesn't really align with this thing that intentionally restricts the freedom of certain people involved in a system. I don't know, like, what is, like, ultimately correct, but I can definitely see the direction that things are going. We are shifting away very, very quickly from the copyleft, from, like, all of this stuff that has classically been here. It's always going to have a place. Like, there's always, like, the Linux kernel is always going to be GPL v2. Torvalds has said he has no interest in GPL v3. He doesn't care about TiVoization, and relicensing it to, like, MIT at this point, that would be an absolute nightmare to do. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And you're always going to have the... I don't see any reason why the GNU core tooling would go away. Like, I know BusyBox has gotten a lot better than it used to be, and we're probably going to get to a point eventually where compiling the kernel with
rewrite everything in Rust.
Yes. We're gonna get, I know there was the Amazon project where they were rewriting the core tools in Rust, which I love.
Who hasn't tried that?
Right, but if Amazon's backing it, they have money and they have developers, so that's feasible in their case. But where was I going with that? Free software,
Clang and Linux kernel.
Oh yes, Clang. Thank you. We're gonna get to a point where compiling Linux with Clang is going to be as good as GCC, and maybe we see a shift over to BusyBox as the main tooling. But I like, that's not something I really see being like a future that people are pushing for. So there's still going to be those core systems, but all of the software you run on top of that, it's getting more and more MIT every single day.
It is getting more open source, less free software.
Yes.
Honestly. Basically, that's what it means.
Which, depending on who you are, you would argue is more freedom than the free software side.
Yeah.
I've always said that I respect what the free software movement has done, but for my personal system, I am a more pragmatic user. As I said, my first browser on Linux was Vivaldi, which, if you ask DT, is proprietary garbage.
Yeah, I'm gonna say this. Free Software Foundation and all people surrounding it, they did a lot of good in the years that passed. Simple as that. Their time has passed. There is a change of generation happening. New people are coming, and with that comes new ideas, new values even, and that is the big problem for that crowd. And there is certain percentage that will stay, that will bring the message forward, and you have all space to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not stopping you, and nobody should stop you.
Well,
Simple as that.
yeah. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think that the funnier thing with like the new generation coming up is we've already seen like some of these like new young leaders like the like Asahi leader, the developer of Asahi Linux. You got like Leo Rowe over on Libre Boot. You've got a bunch of other people out there who are doing great things, but my favorite part is the people who are like, I think Leah's one of them, who in some cases are more extreme about free software than the FSF. Because I don't know if you saw it, but LibreBoot had this blog post where basically they argued that the Free Software Foundation actually doesn't care about free software because they don't care about the software that is embedded into the hardware that the user cannot change. That, like, they don't consider that as part of the software in the system. So that's not something that you need to be concerned with. But in this, like, in like LibreBoot's case, they're like, no, if that's not going to be open, then the whole free software thing doesn't matter. Like, it doesn't, like, the idea they had was if your firmware embedded into the hardware, the FSF doesn't really care about that because it's not something the user is intended to change. But if that same firmware is something loaded as you boot the system, in that case, it's proprietary and you shouldn't be running it. But it's still the exact same software in the end. So wouldn't the loading the firmware as you boot be the better option? Because then the user can like reverse engineer it, they can analyze it, they can change it, as opposed to having it embedded in the hardware where it's always going to be proprietary and nobody can touch it.
I would agree with them. Because, that's the logically better option. But, again, FSF is older. It has mindsets are a lot harder to change than the technology is changing. So that might have something to do with it as well. Because maybe when those opinions were forming, maybe when that was setting in stone, really, microcodes and stuff like that wasn't even an option. That kind of firmware loaded on or weren't a norm like it is nowadays.
They existed, but they were not the norm. I'm pretty sure when the FSF was forming, Intel was rolling out their microcode. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But it's like a couple of years it really had existed by that point.
Yeah.
It was not, the standard that it is today where if you're getting an x86 CPU, it is going to have microcode updates. You are going to want to install them because otherwise you basically have a broken CPU. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
Reinhard, you mentioned about microcode and all that. I remember the story from back in the day about Intel.
Okay.
When the first processor that had first Pentium or something like that had a floating point unit in the CPU. They messed it up. And what happened? They were selling two CPUs, one with floating point unit, one without.
I think I know the CPU.
One that had floating point unit did floating point calculations slightly off, and there were specific numbers that were way off. So at the end of the day, they actually people first of all were having you have to show that you need that number or that this actually has a problem for you. At the end, they decided to send everybody a new CPU. It was one of the first Pentium, might be Pentium 2 or Pentium 3, something like that. Yeah. And that's something microcode wouldn't be able to fix.
For anyone curious why,
that was hardware.
If you look at any number library, like you look at a money library, for example, it's not doing the money in floating points. Everything is an integer. There is a good reason for that. Floating points are the devil. Like, this is a Chris Titus thumbnail. Floating point units are the devil. Nobody should use floating points. They are bad. Like, if you need precision, floating points should not... Like, they're fine for, like, you know, doing things where it doesn't really matter if you're off by a couple of points. But if you need it to be exactly what it needs to be...
On the money.
Right on the...
Exactly
yeah, right
on the money.
Like, you need, like, a coordinate system where it's down to, like, the meter. You are not using floating points. They're bad. They just don't... No, stop it. You wrap integers.
You're much better off multiplying by 100 than at the end of the operation doing exact opposite.
Yeah.
You're much better off.
Yeah, exactly.
Because integer operations are one of the basically oldest things computer can do.
Mm-hmm.
And it is for so long in those CPUs. And some CPUs even optimize for that.
Mm-hmm.
The big ARM CPUs from Ampere, or it's called the Ampere Ultra CPUs. Mm-hmm. Those are specifically made for integer operations.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you want to know how, like...
The reason for that is because web servers are basically integer operations.
Yeah. If you want to know how...
was great.
If you want to know how unnecessary floating point units are, in the early days of computing, if you needed floating point, it would be a separate chip on the board. Like, you didn't have floating point support in the CPU.
Yeah. I believe that CPU that I mentioned is one of the first that actually had a floating point unit in the CPU itself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like one of my professors might have told me that story at some point.
There are devices that are really good at floating point calculations.
Mm-hmm.
They're normally called graphics cards.
Yeah.
Because that's what they do all the time.
Mm-hmm. Graphics cards are... Look, there's a reason why they went up in price when everyone was mining crypto. They're good at that. They're good at crunching numbers. That's literally their purpose.
Yeah, they're good at floating point calculations.
Mm-hmm.
And crypto mining is essentially floating point calculations as well.
Mm-hmm. It's also a good space heater, but you know, that's a whole separate thing.
Yeah.
So going back to... Sorry?
That's whole computer is a good space heater at the end of the day because it's mostly wasting electricity.
Mm-hmm. Have nothing but exhaust fans, no cooling fans.
Yeah.
No intakes, only outtake. So going back to you hosting your own Mastodon instance, have you been paying attention to what's been happening with Instagram and Threads? Because I know people are very worried about Threads joining the Fediverse, and they're worried about like what's gonna happen and whether whether it should just be blocked and all this stuff.
I know of Threads.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have an opinion about them joining. I can't use Threads. Welcome to European Union.
Right.
They blocked Threads because I have no idea. So something privacy.
I think. GDPR stuff probably then. Let's have a look.
Yes. Yay.
I actually didn't know that. Threads, European Union. Let's see.
Yeah. A lot of regulators said nope, not gonna happen. I think it has to do with something with just registering from Instagram or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Meta's Twitter competitor is not yet available in the EU due to regulatory concerns. Huh. Wow, the EU actually is sensible. Wow, that's...
In theory, EU is sensible.
Mm-hmm.
I won't say my opinion why, but...
In this one case, they are sensible. I'll give you that.
Yeah, they did good.
I'll
say, they did good.
Yeah, like... It would be nice if maybe they called up to, you know, the rest of the social media, but hey, you know.
Well, they're already there. They find them all the time. It just doesn't matter because they have too much money.
Yeah, that's the problem. Well, yeah, like, look, if you find someone $1 billion and they make $10 billion.
Yeah, that's what it is. Basically, that's what it is.
It's just an inconvenience cost.
they like to find them.
You're
That is
basically
the reason they're sensible after all. Because well, if they don't wanna be good for our people, well, we're gonna find them. Free money for us.
Yeah, that's true.
That's basically the idea behind European Union nowadays and tech companies. Fines.
Well, I guess since you don't really have much to say about that, then have you been paying attention to not the Red Hat situation, because there's something there, but the Fedora situation now, the telemetry situation? Because it's a
I'm
mess.
gonna say this way. No, it is a mess. It's a mess because open source and free software people are behind the time. In my opinion, telemetry should be in every semi-major open source project for years now. Not because reality is it gives you good data, much better data than issues and forums. That's what it is. If you want to have good user experience, you're gonna have to collect telemetry. Now the question is how you will collect the telemetry and how nice you're going to be to your users. That's where proprietary companies fail. That's it.
So, okay. Well, one of the concerns that we have, there's definitely probably going to end up being the blocker, is whether it's opt-in or opt-out. Now, the guy that proposed the telemetry for Fedora basically said, if we cannot do opt-out, then there's no point even doing it. Because opt-in telemetry is basically garbage data, and you don't get a representative sample. So you think that it should be
opt-in telemetry brings in the same amount of useful data as forums and issues. Basically none. Simple as that. There is no point to opt-in telemetry or opt-in data acquisition. It just people who don't care will, and those aren't a good sample.
Especially in the Linux world where it's very the whole idea of telemetry is very, very touchy. Maybe you could get away with it more in the macOS world and the Windows world, where people are sort of more conditioned to that being a normal thing. But in the Linux world, if you even say we are going to collect hardware information, people freak out about hardware information, the size of your drive, the CPU you're using, even that is enough for some people to just say, no, that's not going to happen.
Yeah. There needs to be a change of mindset, in my opinion. If we want to have good applications, we need to go and report everything we do with their applications, or we need to allow them to collect data.
So
and I'm an engineer. I'm all for automation, so collect data it is. I'm not gonna go and enter everything I do. I don't have time for that.
One thing that I do think is a concern that makes sense is whether Fedora should be the project collecting this. One argument I did see that kind of does make sense is, why is Fedora collecting the data and not the Gnome project? Because the Gnome project is obviously where that data is going to be used to improve the project. It's not Fedora directly. They're going to be sharing the data with the projects as opposed to using it themselves. And obviously their contributors are going to be working on things in Gnome as well. But it's Gnome itself that's going to benefit.
Yeah, that is actually a bit of a thinker, but there is much more than just Gnome. What is known as simple. Just one of the things: what applications people use, how many times they are used, how long they are turned on. All that stuff can help a distro decide whether that application is even needed. Let's say, for example, I never open, I don't know, something that was pre-installed and open GNOME software.
Mm-hmm.
But the point, if there is enough of people who never open GNOME software, what's the point of it then installed?
Right.
That kind of stuff. And yeah, and then data sharing. Why not collect everything at once when you already have a chance and implementing that same thing 10 times? And because that means 10 times the compute intensity.
Mm-hmm.
Collect it once.
I think the
And
other
you
argument...
can cross-reference data and all that.
Mm-hmm. I think the other argument for Fedora collecting the data is Fedora has the architecture to like support that system, whereas GNOME's obviously a big project, but they're not as big as Fedora is. Like Fedora has those resources to make that actually function.
Yeah. Infrastructure.
Yeah. Fedora also said they are committed to make... Like, this is going to be a big one that I think if they didn't do this, it would just be a no-go full stop. They have said they're committed to making the data collection model as transparent as possible. So they want to make they basically want to make the database schema public, effectively. Not in, like, the actual database schema form, but saying exactly the fields they're collecting, why they're collecting the fields. They want to make sure the entire data collection model is, like, the software itself is open source. They want to have it so if you want to build it yourself, they're going to provide build instructions and you can point it to your own server to collect the data. I think these are things they had to do. Like, if they didn't do this, it would be a no-go. If they were not making it very clear the data they were collecting, I think then you could absolutely argue this is a stupid idea and it should not be done.
Yeah. Then it is a question about privacy. That's one of my stops. If you have that and there is no PII problem, I see no reason why not.
Where I stand on this, I do see the value in the anonymized data and all this, but I put something, I don't know if you saw it, I posted something on Mastodon, and, like, I think ultimately this is I don't have an issue with the data collection myself, and I can see why it is beneficial, but what I posted was, I implore any of the Fedora contributors out there that might see this, please do not back the new telemetry proposal. I know telemetry can be incredibly valuable for improving the product offered by Fedora, and I'm sure some great improvements can be made with it, but I see this as your Amazon Lens moment. If Fedora Linux goes ahead with this, it doesn't matter that the user can opt out, it doesn't matter the data is generic, it doesn't matter the data is anonymized. For now, until the end of time, Fedora will be called a spyware distro. You will hurt community trust in the project far more than anything you will gain from improving the software, and I really don't want to see that happen. The Linux world is very, very touchy about telemetry in any form whatsoever. And I don't see Fedora coming through this unscathed. I think if they go through this, they are going to hurt the project far more than anything they can possibly gain from it.
Possibly, but I'm not sure that it will end that way. I think, it will not go unscathed, but I think gain can be quite big if right people have access to it, have capability to affect change.
So I get that as well. I totally get that as well. It's a very difficult situation to deal with because
people need to. It's open source. People were very opinionated people.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
And it's hard to change opinions.
Yeah, no, I think that part's absolutely true. I don't know, man.
Yeah.
I think, look, I think if they weren't just coming off of the Red Hat situation, it wouldn't be, like, as big of a deal. But
yeah.
I saw someone post something on one of the breakout forums for this that I love so much. There must be an internal contest at Red Hat to see which group can generate the most negative press and or piss off the most people. The fact there appears to be a strong desire within Red Hat to collect user data from users' private machines using an opt-out mechanism is troubling, to put it diplomatically. Obviously, this person didn't like the change, but I think that first part, like, seeing who at Red Hat can generate the most negative press, I think is a good way to put it, because Red Hat does not get a break right now. Like, every other day, there is some new thing happening. Where did you stand on the Red Hat thing, by the way?
I stand on, I don't care.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Either way.
Yeah, that's fair.
There is no clear legality issues.
Mm-hmm.
That's where it ends for me. They have all right to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, they have all right to do it. So,
mm-hmm.
Oh well. And I always thought that the model of rebuilders was problematic, to say just a little bit about it.
Mm-hmm.
Problematic.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I didn't think it would last.
Mm-hmm. Actually, on the note of rebuilders, I don't know if you saw this. Where is it? Should be. I'm gonna send you something, because if you have not seen this yet, you're gonna laugh, because now people are backing a certain company that I never expected people to back.
Oh wow!
This is
I'm just waiting for 180.
For anyone listening, this is a blog post from Oracle. That Oracle. Keep Linux open and free. We can't afford not to. Oracle is posting this.
Oracle. The
I
company
don't believe them.
Behind Java, MySQL, and all that.
For the record, I do not believe Oracle. Oracle is doing this purely out of self-interest to get an own on Red Hat. But I love it so much.
Why not? Free positive press.
Yes, no, that's the thing. All they have to do is say, we are not, or it doesn't matter. Like, Microsoft could come out and say, we want to keep Linux open and free right now, and it's just free positive press.
Yeah.
It's so good. Like, the funniest part about it is I've seen people who are now like, we love Oracle. Like, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean? This is Oracle.
This is company that is theorized has like lots of lawyers.
This
is the same company that's 180 really quick. We're gonna see where this road leads us.
Honestly, you've made a mistake. Look, I don't know. Who do you trust less, Oracle or IBM? Because I don't know, because they're both horrible.
Yeah. I don't know. Like, that's a hard one.
It is. Yeah. So people just forget so quickly. Like, the internet has a 5-minute attention span.
I'm gonna say this way about certain things. Linux community has a memory of we will never forget,
mm-hmm.
and about certain other stuff they have a memory of it's been 2 seconds. What happened?
Oh yeah. People will never forget like some random comment Lennart Pottering made 15 years ago. That will never, ever leave the zeitgeist. Oracle? Who's Oracle? I love the small indie company that we all love now.
Yeah. I honestly wanted to I equate currently Red Hat and IBM to Blizzard. Or to Activision in general.
Okay, look, there's no breast milk being stolen from fridges, so there's at least that. But that does not mean that they're still not a good company.
I think I play Blizzard games all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of can't wait for it to become Xbox Blizzard. Maybe some structure will be there.
Surely, look,
It can't go worse than what it has already been.
Yeah, I guess you're right. It can't. It can't get any worse.
If
Yeah,
there is one
I don't
company
believe
that
that,
it can't
though.
go worse, it's Activision Blizzard.
Activision Blizzard King. You forgot about the King part. The King part's very important.
Of course, yes. ABK. Yeah, actually, it is very important because Microsoft wants for the King part more than anything else.
I'm sure they do. The mobile space is very, very profitable.
They want that mobile space because they want to be the big player there. Simply as they know that they won in PC. They know they lost in console. The last Battlefield is mobile games. They want to be the big player there.
And that's the space that's still growing. Like, you know, you are still there is still growth in the PC space, and there's still growth in the console space. Like, you know, populations go up, all that stuff. But if you look at any graphs of like game growth, especially because as countries like India was a big recent one. Like, as India came online, like, mobile games have absolutely exploded there. Like, China was first, they came online, China became a massive market. And now India is going sort of down that same route, and because, you know, people don't have a lot of disposable income, a lot of people are just going to have their phone, and that's going to be their gaming device as well. So you're seeing a lot of, like, I think, and Brazil as well. Brazil is another great example. Like, as they rise up, they are seeing more people get online and having phones, and you're seeing like, there are games in these regions that I've never heard of, but are some of the biggest games in the world.
Yeah. And reality is, mobile game market has a different way of thinking. That's the main catch.
You mean
a lot of money?
Selling everything possible. To be fair, that's
microtransactions.
Microtransactions.
That's the genesis of microtransactions.
Depending on how you...
Okay,
Horsepower is technically the genesis.
The modern microtransactions.
Sure.
Let's say it this way.
The idea of the infinite scale, where you can spend as much money as you want. Yeah,
there was that horse armor and all that, but the serious microtransactions came because of mobile space, and they crept into our desktop games as well.
Yeah, they do.
And nobody liked it.
There was that brief period where a lot of companies were trying to bring NFTs into games as well. Some are still trying to do that. Fun. It's not stopped yet.
Yeah.
But
yeah,
at least it's slowed down a little bit. At least with NFT market like completely imploding, it didn't happen as quickly. I don't believe it's not going to happen. If there is a profit margin to be had there, these companies are going to find it. Yeah. But it might take a bit longer now, which is good.
Well, when it comes to microtransactions, I am happy that Diablo 4 doesn't have them. That they kept that in Immortal. For now.
For now.
I am not holding my breath.
Wait until Season 2.
Especially if Microsoft doesn't buy it, I am not holding my breath.
I know people are looking for more stash tabs. That's a good microtransaction spot.
Yes, those stash tabs, and one thing I had to do was explain to people why stash tabs can't be implemented immediately. Which, I don't know, people think that all you have to do is paint another icon and you have a stash tab. It doesn't work that way. It's not magic. You have to have a database, and you won't go migrate database every 5 seconds. That's kind of the point. Why no more stash tabs? That's why they're waiting for Season 2 with gem tab and all that, because database migrations are hard and error prone. And you do not want to corrupt the database for Diablo 4.
Now,
That
The
would be a
part
fun one.
the important part though is why were they not there from the start? That's a whole different question.
Because I thought it would be enough for
Yeah.
first couple of
Yeah,
seasons.
they thought
And
they
gem
thought
tab, I
wrong.
don't really see a problem. I don't see a problem with gems. I have 50 of each of them. I have enough. Some of them collect way too many. They actually had to increase the number of ores and herbs you can have. Because some people hit 9,999. So they add another 9 to the code. So now we have 99,999, and by this speed, by season 3, everybody, some people will have that full.
Oh, without doubt, for sure. Oh god, man! Like we all love modern gaming. It's great.
Yeah,
Just play indie games. Indie games where it's chill. You're not gonna
I
have
don't
as
play
much of this
much of
mess.
that.
Sorry?
I don't play much of that. I
Yeah?
don't play much indie games.
You just play Call of Duty?
I
Call of Duty
mostly
and
play Call of
Diablo?
Duty. Currently, I'm Call of Duty Diablo, and I used to play a lot of World of Warcraft, and maybe some. The only game that like you could classify as indie for me is Kerbal Space Program.
Okay.
Yeah.
I've actually never played that. I don't know why. It's just never grabbed my interest. I don't. It seems cool. I get it. Like it makes sense why it's cool, but like it's not my thing.
Rocket go burr, rocket go boom. That's the game loop of Kerbal Space Program, and then by the time you launch it 50 times, you're happy it didn't go boom right away. That's the fun game loop of Kerbal Space Program.
It
It's
seems
actually
cool.
fun.
It's actually fun. That's the best selling, the best advertisement for a game. It's actually fun, which is not true for a lot of games out there.
And since there is no humans in the game, you don't worry about it going boom. You have this little green, possibly plants. Nobody knows exactly. They do have arms and legs and walk, but they're possibly plants.
Possibly plants.
So nobody knows. Nobody knows the lore behind them.
The lore doesn't matter.
The theory behind it, they're possibly plant-based, not animal-based. And when they go boom, you're sad. Especially you're sad when you leave them on a moon. That's when the whole rescue operation begins. That's the second part of the game loop. Rescue operation. Let's just say I once walked for 4 hours just so I could get my Kerbal to the rocket because I landed a bit too far away. And I walked in real time, so that was 4 hours real time walk.
What?
Thanks God, I automated it. I grabbed a cube, some small cube, and I grabbed my mouse and placed it on the cube, and that cube was placed on the W key, and off it went.
That reminds me of how I automated my block training in Skyrim. I grabbed a rubber band, put it around the block button and around the analog stick, so you would just keep walking into the enemy, and they'll just keep trying to smash your shield.
Yeah,
Got 100 pretty quickly.
Then I went off to watch a movie on the second monitor while making sure my Kerbal didn't fall.
So
that would be embarrassing.
It's just like I don't understand why you did that.
I didn't want to leave him on the moon. I didn't want to leave him on the moon. That's literally it, and I didn't wanna go and send another rocket up because I was really bad at landing things at the time. which is why I landed it so far away, because I was trying to keep it safe.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And then you spent 4 hours trying to rescue. Was the 4 hours
Yes.
worth it? Did you rescue him?
Yes,
Wow.
I
Okay.
rescued him. Of course, I had to send another rocket because I ran out of fuel when I came back to Kerbal.
Mm-hmm.
So I had to send another one just to get right nearby, so I could do a spacewalk to the other one and turn it around and then land, or more like just re-enter, because then parachutes took over everything else.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that was an adventure.
It sounds like it.
Kerbal
Oh,
space program.
yeah.
Some
Any,
call it explosion simulator.
that's it. Yeah, rocket go boom.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's pretty much everything to talk about. Unless there's anything else you specifically want to mention. Like, we're gonna do sign-offs, but anything else you want to talk about?
Nothing else. Like, I'm looking for a job.
Yeah, if anyone has like a remote position that you've got open for like what is it, cloud server programmer stuff.
Yeah,
Yeah, let them
cloud
know.
DevOps. Yeah, nice to let me know.
Is Mastodon anything else? That'll be in the description. Anything else you want to mention? Uh, I can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, what the hell happened there?
Can
Okay.
you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Can you? Yay. Okay.
Okay, sure.
So I said, check out my YouTube channel, and if you find that it's bad, I give you permission to cry, because I do many times. Yes, it's bad. And at that point, I probably should say that I'll be doing streaming again until again give up. I'm gonna try and do it for at least a month.
How often do you stream?
Yeah. Normally, when I do stream, I stream twice a week.
Mhm.
I do programming. I have a couple of ideas again, so I'm gonna try and actually finish them this time.
Mhm.
Yeah. So
That everything you want to mention? Everything you want to mention? You got anything else that you're
yeah, I
not
guess
thinking of?
that's it.
Okay.
Yes, that's it.
I'll put all your links in the description down below, so if anyone wants to go find them, then that should be easy enough to do. As for me, if you want to go see my Linux videos, I upload there 6-ish times a week. I'm not sure what's going to be out by then, because this is coming out in like 2 weeks. Hopefully not more Red Hat stuff. I really hope, because I'm getting sick of talking about Red Hat. They need to stop. And then Oracle needs to stop writing ridiculous blog posts like they respect open source, because you don't. Because I'm gonna have to. I already planned out all my videos for this week. I can't not do a video on Oracle saying they're gonna respect open source. So yeah, that'll be out by the time you see this. Maybe Red Hat's gonna do something else dumb. They probably will. Anyway. The gaming channel is Brody on Games. Actually, wait, did I say the Linux channel name? That's Brody Robson. Go there, check it out. Brody on Games is my gaming channel. I probably have finished Black Mesa by the time you guys are seeing this. So if I have, I'll be playing... I think I'll be doing Portal co-op with Ren. But if I've not finished it, I'll be playing Black Mesa. Also, Final Fantasy 16, which is very fun. I highly recommend it. If you're listening to the audio version of this, you can find the video version over on YouTube at Tech Over Tea. If you're watching the video, you can find the audio version on any podcast platform. There is an RSS feed right in Tech Over Tea. I like sticking my RSS feed in AntennaPod. It's a great app, but it's also on, iTunes, Google Podcasts, all that stuff. You better find it. Yeah. I'll give you the final word. What do you want to say?
Thank you for listening to me ramble.
you know, I enjoyed the rambling. As it got earlier in the morning for you, the rambling got worse and worse. Because what is it, like 2 a.m. for you now?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I guess
At least it's silent.
That's true. Yeah. It's going on 9:40 a.m. here, and it is very sunny outside.
Right. Very bright.
It's been cloudy the past couple of days. Anyway, with that, I guess it's going to be the end of the show. So, I'm out.